Join me tonight on Twitch at 11:30 p.m. Eastern after the conclusion of Sunday Night Football, where we'll talk about everything that happened this week in the NFL. And join me Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern to play some live NFL trivia for a chance to win cash prizes. Link in the description below. And now, on with our feature presentation. There are some things regarding rivalries in the NFL that make no sense whatsoever and cannot be explained. For example, why is it that the Indianapolis Colts cannot win a game in Jacksonville, no matter how good the Colts are, or no matter how bad the Jaguars are? Why is it that seemingly every time the New Orleans Saints play the Los Angeles Rams, something screwy happens with the officiating? And for the purposes of this, why is it that every time the Chicago Bears play the Dallas Cowboys, whoever is in charge of the Bears completely turns their brain off and forgets how to coach a football team? Seriously, it makes no sense. In 1973, head coach Abe Gibran called one of the stupidest fake punts you're ever going to see in your life in his own territory in a tie game late in the fourth quarter, which backfired tremendously. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And you'd think that would have been the worst coaching move by the Bears against the Cowboys. But there's more. In 1984, after Walter Payton got 20 carries for 130 yards in the first half and was torching Dallas's run defense, head coach Mike Ditka, for some inexplicable reason, decided to switch it up in the second half and give Payton just 5 carries and a loss. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And you'd think that would have been the worst coaching move by the Bears against the Cowboys. But there's more. And this time, it comes in the playoffs. December 29th, 1991. It's the NFC wildcard round, and we've got a critical matchup on our hands between the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys. Both of these teams enter the game with identical 11-5 records, with the Bears hosting this game by virtue of the tiebreaker. And obviously, the stakes cannot be higher. Win this game, and you move on to the next round, where you'll have a meeting against the Detroit Lions. Lose this game, and your season is done. These are two teams trending in two completely different directions, with the Cowboys entering the postseason on a 5-game winning streak, and the Bears entering having dropped 3 of their last 5. Even though the Bears have home field in this one and had won 3 straight against Dallas, fans wondered just how much momentum was going to matter. And sure enough, in the first quarter, Dallas got off to a great start. On the very first drive of the game, Jim Harbaugh fumbled it for Chicago, and the Cowboys recovered, eventually capitalizing off of the mistake with a 27-yard field goal by Ken Willis. Then the miscues continued for Chicago, as on their second drive, after being forced to punt, the punt gets blocked and the Cowboys start the drive deep in Chicago territory in the red zone. Emmitt Smith punches it in from a yard out to give the Cowboys a 10-0 lead in the first quarter, as this game is going absolutely swimmingly for the visitors. At halftime, the Cowboys are still holding on to the lead, as it's a 10-3 ball game. With the Bears looking like they're getting momentum back after Butler hits his second field goal of the day to make it 10-6, the Cowboys respond beautifully, as Steve Berline hits Jay Novacek on a 3-yard touchdown pass to make it a 17-6 game. Things are now looking bleak for the Bears, and even though there's still time left, as we're still in the third quarter, Chicago needs to play great the rest of the way if they want to win this one. They cannot get in their own way with poor execution or poor coaching. And this is what we call foreshadowing. Eventually, with the score still at 17-6 in favor of the Cowboys, the Bears get it back with just over 5 minutes left in the ballgame. And the Cowboys see the surefire win slip from their fingers as Tony Hill drops what should have been a fairly easy interception. Instead, after dropping what was an absolute gift, the Bears are given new life, and they take advantage of it. Eventually, they get a first down, and a nice 15-yard run by Neil Anderson sets Chicago up in the red zone. With this field position, the Bears find the end zone for the first time today, as Tom Waddle catches a 6-yard touchdown pass from Jim Harbaugh to make it a 17-13 game. Remember that the 2-point conversion did not exist back then. Chicago still needed a touchdown to win it, and things were looking somewhat bleak, but at least the Bears now had a chance to pull off a stunning come-from-behind victory. The good news was that they were now only down by 4 points instead of 11. The bad news was that there were only about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game, and the Bears only had 1 timeout. You think what happens if you kick it deep, and best case scenario, you're getting the ball back with only a minute left and needing to go the length of the field. In other words, there's no discussion here, or at least there shouldn't be. You have to go for the onside kick. So with that in mind, let's see what the Bears have lined up on this all-important kickoff. Let's see what sort of onside kick they have ready to go with their season on the line.
They'll probably line up like this and then shift. There goes the shift.
Don't forget Gardaki's left-footed, so that's why they're going that way. And he kicks away. Kicks it out of bounds.
I don't know what that was.
I don't either.
I mean, it wasn't a deep kick, and it wasn't a short kick.
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something that looked bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something that looked awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work, And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of Chicago Bears head coach Mike Ditka. Ditka had his fair share of experience in the postseason. As a head coach, he coached in 12 playoff games, including 3 during that 1985 season when the Chicago Bears won their first and only Super Bowl in franchise history. And this game against the Cowboys was his 12th and final game. And man, what a way to go out. Way to go out on one of the dumbest things I've seen a head coach do in a playoff game, because I can safely say that nothing about what Ditka did here makes any sense whatsoever. So with that being said, let's take a look at why not calling an onside kick here and doing whatever the heck this was instead is a bad idea. As always with something like this, I like to look at the risk-reward factor with the two options presented. What would have happened if the Bears kicked it off deep, and what would have happened if the Bears went with the onside? Let's start with the onside kick, which is what I, along with just about everyone watching this game, thought the Bears should have done. The reward is obviously you get a possession. If you recover the onside kick, you keep the ball. You have all the momentum on your side, and you have about 2.5 minutes left to drive 50 or so yards to score the game-winning touchdown and advance in the postseason. However, that's obvious. The onside kick is a fairly low probability play. Even if it was easier to recover them back in 1991 compared to today, when you'd have a better chance trying to survive getting trucked by Derrick Henry than recovering an onside kick, it's still pretty hard to do. And there's a reason you didn't see teams trying onside kicks all the time. The obvious risk is that if you don't recover, the Cowboys get the ball. Let's assume that the onside kick goes 10 yards and the Cowboys recover it at the 45-yard line. No matter what happens, if the Cowboys get a first down, the game is over since you only have one timeout. Let's suppose you get a stop at the furthest possible distance, so it would be 4th and inches. As the Bears, again, you only have one timeout, and you have the 2-minute warning. You call the timeout after the first play, you let the clock go down to the 2-minute warning on the second play, and you let the clock go down to 1:20 on the third play. Now the Cowboys, in the absolute worst case scenario, provided you get a stop, have the ball at the 36-yard line. I'm telling you straight up that the Cowboys will not try a field goal here. Dallas's kicker is Ken Willis. He's 4 for 11 lifetime for 50-plus yards, which is not good. He's missed 2 kicks already today, including one from 47 yards out which was not blocked and came up miles short of the goalpost. The longest kick of his career is from 54 yards out, and again from 7 yards closer earlier in this game, he was well short. I would have been stunned if Dallas opted for the 53-yard field goal here. The risk considering how erratic Willis was during the game was too much, and the amount of field position sacrificed is a lot. This means that if you go for the onside kick and you get a stop, in the absolute worst case scenario with a stop, the Cowboys are punting the ball away in a 4-point game, and you need a touchdown to win. Either you recover the onside kick and get a possession and time to work with, you don't recover and you get a stop and it's still a 4-point game, or you don't recover and you don't get a stop and the game is over. Now let's look at option number 2, which is not going with the onside kick, and instead kicking it off deep. Let's think of the absolute best case scenario here that's realistic, and assume that the Cowboys are getting the ball at the 20-yard line on a touchback. If you get 3 stops and the Cowboys get no yards on either of those plays, you're calling the timeout after the first play, you're letting the clock go to the 2-minute warning on the second play, and you're letting the clock go down to 1:20 on the third play. This means that in the absolute best case scenario, the Cowboys are punting the ball away in a 4-point game, and you need a touchdown to win. Gee, that sounds like the exact same thing as the absolute worst case scenario in the situation involving what happens if you don't recover the onside kick. The only difference is that here, you're about 10 yards further up the field. Is that really worth it? How can you possibly look at that and say that not going for the onside kick makes any sense, when the best case scenario by kicking it off deep is almost identical to the absolute worst case scenario by going for the onside kick? And yet, what the Bears opted to do here was a third option that I didn't think was possible. And that was, well, in the words of the legendary John Madden,
it wasn't a deep kick, and it wasn't a short kick.
Let's look at the best case and worst case scenario with whatever the heck this pooch kick was. First off, if your objective here is to recover the ball, then why the heck are you kicking it to the side where every Cowboys player on the kickoff team is? And why the heck do you have a player who is literally just standing there and will make no effort to go down the field? You need all the help you can get, so why are you voluntarily sacrificing one of your own players? Nothing about this play design made any sense, so I can't even say that the best case scenario here is if the Bears were going to recover this kick. Because let's be honest, in no universe in any dimension were they ever going to recover this ball. That means that the best case scenario is, once again, that the Cowboys are punting near midfield and you're getting the ball back with about 1:10 left and needing to go the length of the field for a touchdown. Again, remind me why that's better than trying an onside kick? Remind me why that's a better solution? Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Look, going for the onside kick is a tough decision because it can be a huge gamble. But of all the criteria for going for the onside kick, here, it's met. Trailing with little time left in the game and the clock not on your side since you only have one timeout? Check. If you kick it deep and get a stop, you're going to get the ball back with no timeouts and virtually no time left in the game to work with? Check. The score is completely irrelevant, since if you get a stop, the other team won't try to put more points on the board. If you don't get a stop, the game is over, period? Check. There was no reason not to go for the onside kick. None whatsoever. And yet the Bears not only decided not to do that, but decided to call a pooch kick that never had a chance in the world at working. And all Mike Ditka could say after the game about the play and the ending was, they won. That's all. There's not much you could say. No wonder this was the beginning of the end for him. Because, and I truly mean this, nothing about this decision made any sense whatsoever. So what do we learn from all this? If you're in a situation where you have to try an onside kick, then for the love of God, try the onside kick! If you're presented with two options, and the absolute worst case scenario in option 1 is the equivalent of the absolute best case scenario in option 2, then go with option 1. If your season is on the line and you desperately need an extra possession, then don't automatically sacrifice that opportunity at an extra possession to do something stupid that's never going to work. And if you're playing in the playoffs and the game is on the line, now is not the time to completely turn off your brain and do something that is in no way, shape, or form in the best interest of your team. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9, and subscribe to 60 Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.